So what's the right investment path for Varka? Should he go for his Constellations or his signature weapon? He actually does have a pretty different investment path from most DPSs we've seen recently. So in this video, I'll just be comparing all of his Constellations and explaining them, telling you how much damage they're going to do, and then compare them to his signature weapon, and then I'll give you the final roadmap you should take when wishing for Varka. But if you want the best way to get Primo Gems to go for Varka's Constellations or his weapons or anything like that, I'd recommend getting your Genesis Crystals from ldshop.gg. It's a cheap, fast, and secure game top-up website where you can buy different games currencies including Genshin Impacts up to 30% cheaper. Check it out in the link in the description or the pinned comment. Alright, so back to the video, starting off with the signature weapon, Just of the Mighty Wolf. This 5-star Claymore is just going to give you 608 base attack at level 90, which is pretty good. And it's going to give you a 33% crit rate substat, which is pretty good too. Crit is already pretty valuable on Varka. The passive is just going to increase your attack speed by 10%. That's usually just going to allow you to fit a few extra hits in your rotations. Probably just one extra, maybe two max, it depends. But it's just a little extra damage. And it's also going to make playing them a little more comfortable in general. It's just going to feel smoother. And then you can get up to 4 stacks by hitting opponents with your normal attacks, or when casting your elemental skill or doing charge attacks. You can easily max out the 4 stacks of these with Varka just by using your normal attacks, and then each stack is just going to give you 7.5% damage bonus. So it's basically just going to be a 30% damage bonus for Varka, which is pretty good. The second part of the passive is just going to be the Hex Ray buff. So if you have 2 Hex Ray characters in your team, that means Varka and an extra character. For the previous stacks, now each stack is also going to give you 7.5% crit damage increase. So it's also going to be a 30% extra crit damage, which is super good. So this weapon in total is just going to give you 33% crit rate, 10% attack speed, 30% damage bonus, and 30% crit damage for Varka. That's going to be super good and super valuable, and it's definitely going to be much better than any other weapon that he can use. How much better is obviously just going to depend on what weapon you had previously, but in general, it's going to be around the 31% from the best free-to-play option, which is the Tidal Shadow, which is a huge increase. It's going to be around a 22% better from the R1 Serpent Spine, which is also, you know, a decent increase. And if you have other 5-star weapons, for example, like Moika's weapon or the Beacon or something like that, it's usually going to be around like 14 to 18% better than those, depending on which weapon, but it's still a pretty decent increase. For a 5-star weapon for a DPS character, honestly, I'd say it's like a better than average increase in general. This weapon is definitely going to be one of the good signature weapons in the game for its own character. I'm going to review on different characters soon, so stay tuned for that. But for Varka himself, it's actually going to be a very good weapon and a pretty decent upgrade. Alright, so now moving on to his Constellations, I'm just going to explain them and tell you how much damage they're going to give you real quick. First of all, C1 is basically just going to give you 1 extra charge of your special elemental skill, the 4 Winds Ascension. So you can just add 1 more in your rotation, and that's going to be obviously good, but in general, it's also going to make his rotation a little more cramped, which I'm not sure how to exactly feel about that. It might impact the exact damage increases a little bit, but in general, it's probably just going to be a positive thing. It's just 1 extra stack of your special elemental skill. And then also you're just going to get an effect, and whenever you use your special elemental skill or your special charge attack, the Azure Devour thing, you're going to deal 200% of the original damage dealt by your elemental skill or your charge attacks. So basically the first charge attack or elemental skill, just the first one out of the 2 that you do in your rotation, you can deal 200% out of the original damage of whatever the first attack was. So it's basically just extra damage. So yeah, C1 is basically just 1 extra charge of your special elemental skill and then extra damage. Usually it's going to result in around a 19% damage increase for Varka. And that's also a pretty decent constellation, especially for C1. It's definitely not too bad. Not super good, but I'd say it's a little above average in general. C2 is pretty simple, it's just that when you do your special elemental skill or charge attack too, he's also going to deal an additional strike. He's going to deal AoE and Nemo damage equal to 800% of Varka's attack. So it's basically just a nuke. So yeah, it's just a nuke for extra damage. Usually it's going to be around an 18% damage increase for Varka, which is also pretty decent. Now C3 is just going to increase the level of your elemental skill. But actually Varka is going to have probably one of the best increases from like level constellations like that, especially for his elemental skill. Your elemental skill is basically most of your damage, so increasing all of the multipliers is actually going to result in a pretty decent damage increase. So usually it's going to be around like a 13% damage increase, which is actually super good for just a level constellation. It's almost like a normal constellation. So yeah, just giving 3 extra levels to your elemental skill is actually pretty valuable for Varka. Now C4 is just a pure support constellation, honestly. It's just when Varka triggers a swirl reaction, all of your party members are just going to gain 20% anemo damage bonus and then 20% damage bonus for the swirled elements. So it's basically just extra damage to your team in general, and also Varka a little bit, but it's not really like super good. It's more of like a support constellation with a main DPS that's kind of meh. The damage increase for Varka himself is not going to be that big. Team-wide damage is obviously going to depend on the team, but for his main teams, it's probably going to be around like an 8 to 9% damage increase, which is decent, but yeah, it's not all of that. C5 is just going to increase the level of your elemental burst. It really just doesn't matter for Varka. His elemental burst is a very small part of his like total damage. It's not really going to matter much. It's just going to be like a 1%, maybe 2% damage increase, and that's pretty much it. It's an obvious skip. C6 is basically just going to make it free to have the charge attacks and the special skill. You're just going to have a short window where you can just perform your charge attack or special charge attack without expanding any stacks. And then when you do your charge attack, you can use the skill without consuming any stacks, and then you can just make it a chain. So you can just mindlessly play him, and you're just going to be performing your charge attacks and special skill like endlessly until your rotation ends. That's basically it. It's also going to buff your passive talent. So previously you had 4 stacks that are just going to give you 30% damage increase to your special charge attacks and special elemental skill. Now each of them is also going to give you 20% crit damage, so you can have a total of an extra 80% crit damage from your C6, which is obviously super good and broken. So yeah, C6 is basically just going to change his playstyle completely almost. You can just spam your charge attacks and your elemental skill, and then you also get 80% extra crit damage for that beefy extra strong hits. Usually it's going to be around a 40% damage increase, which is super good for C6. So yeah, if that's one you want to go for, then obviously go for it. It's a good constellation, a good C6. Would I recommend going for it? No, but if you want to, then it's good. Alright, so now for the final conclusion, how should you wish for Varka? Should you go for the weapon first, constellations first? Honestly, in my opinion, I think the first thing you'd want to go for is just going to be R1. R1 is generally going to be better than C1, especially if you don't have good weapons. And even if you have good weapons, it's still going to be a little better, or at worst case scenario, just like 1% worse, or somewhere around that. So R1 is just going to be either better or at worst equal to C1, and then R1 is just an extra weapon on your account. So obviously you'd want to go for R1 first. It's also going to be more than just extra damage. It's going to increase your attack speed, which is going to make him a little smoother to play. Just simple damage increase. Also, it's a better drip for him. So this time, I think R1 is definitely going to be the better option to go for Varka. No matter what you have already, probably R1 is going to be the better option. Obviously, after that, you can go for C1. C1 is just going to be pretty good, especially having his R1. It's going to be a little more comfortable to play, in my opinion. So having C1 is also going to be a decent damage increase. After that, obviously, you can go for C2 also. Pretty good extra damage too. Pretty simple. You don't need to do anything, and it's also going to be a decent damage increase. And honestly, if you want to invest in him more, I'd say Varka is one of the few characters that I'll say going C3 R1 is also worth it. So if you want to go for C3, it's actually a little decent too. It's just going to increase the level of your skill. All of your multipliers are going to be increased, so it's actually going to be a little more valuable. Stopping at C3 R1 is not going to be too bad with Varka. For most characters, you'd want to stop at like C2 R1 for like the best value, but I think the value of C3 R1 is also pretty decent for Varka. So yeah, if you want to invest in him a little bit, especially since it's like a sort of underpowered quote-unquote character, C3 R1 is not going to be a bad option too, but I definitely recommend stopping at C3. C4, C5 are going to be sort of useless, so I definitely wouldn't recommend going for it. Unless you'd want to continue to C6, then go for it, but if not, stopping at C2 R1 or C3 R1 is probably going to be the better option for Varka. But yeah, that was it video guys. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel. I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.